In the previous session, we talked about finding God's fingerprints in the story of those we are sharing with. This means affirming God's ongoing presence in people's lives, even though they might not recognize it. Today we're going to talk about how our personal stories can enhance and interconnect with the faith-sharing conversation. You might not think your experiences of faith are all that compelling, but personal stories, no matter how trivial they may appear, can be one of the most powerful tools for faith sharing.
I think that it's really important that everybody knows that Jesus loves them, that they are the unconditional, beloved child of God, that they belong, that they are His. A lot of people don't feel like they belong anywhere. They feel really isolated, and when you have God in your life, you're never isolated. You've always got your friend with Jesus. And even though it's a really abstract sort of concept, and I appreciate that it's abstract and I struggle with it myself, and that's what I want to share with people, that we are loved, that we all are loved, that we are all precious and perfect in God's eyes. And some people have never heard that. Some people don't know that they're loved unconditionally. They have all their love tied up in romantic relationships and the demands of family. And they don't experience that unconditional, fulfilling, every breath you take love. I think personal testimonies are really important, but then I think everybody has a really important story to tell. Sometimes I don't always share all of my story. Some of my story is really, really icky, yucky and untidy. But then there's parts of my Christian story that I'm really willing to share. Like, my husband and I, when we got married, we weren't Christians and we come from a really different background. And when we got married, we made a corporate decision to become Christians. We decided that we needed something that gave our relationship, our marriage, a really solid foundation. So it was like, okay, we'll be Christians. We just dragged ourselves off to the first church that we came to, and we've been there ever since and growing in our faith with Him. Making that decision to wanting to share your story is the first step, right? So make your decision, get yourself ready to share your story, and then over a little period of time, sort of mentally rehearse it. So when you're out and you're talking to your friends, find those, start to recognise those little places where you could share your story, and you could mentally just sort of run it through your mind. This is an opportunity, and I could say, oh, could I pray for you? And if you mentally run it through your mind in social situations, after a little while, you'll actually open your mouth and say what you want to say. We don't live in a society that's really comfortable with God. We're not comfortable with God. Coming to God for a lot of people has to be a really slow, gentle process. So you don't want to just bombard people with, this is going to make your life better, because most people aren't going to believe that. So sharing your story, how God made your life better, is a really soft approach. And then people see, they say, I want some of that. I want that peace that you have in your life, and you told me that you got it with God, and I want to share that with you. So soft. I use the offer of prayer and the suggestion of prayer and the greatness of God to bring people to asking questions. And I can be a bit flippant in the way I do stuff. You know, it's like I could just say, oh yeah, God could fix it, or you could have a miracle. It's sort of stuff. So people say, well, how do you get a miracle? It's like, well, you get miracles by praying for miracles, by asking the man who makes the miracles to give you a miracle. I also wear a sorry t-shirt all the time, and the sorry t-shirt opens up conversations everywhere I go. People always want to know what I'm sorry about. And I'm always sorry about something, always. There's always something. I can always get people. Sometimes I'm a bit flippant and say, I'm sorry I got out of bed this morning if I don't want to engage. Or I'm sorry that, I yelled at my children this morning. But that sorry for me says, I'm sorry, and I'm going to turn around and I'm going to change my behaviour. That's what it reminds me about. It reminds me to ask God for forgiveness and to change my behaviour that's not appropriate. And so it allows me, if people want to stay in conversation with me about sorry, we can get there with that. That's fabulous. It's fabulous. In a life with Jesus, we experience lots and lots of different things, and when you're sharing with people, you only need to share little bits of your story that is relevant and supports the situation that the person finds themselves in now. So if you're with somebody who's feeling lost and alone, talking to them about the blessing you received at some big family event isn't an appropriate time to do that. This person's feeling lost and alone. They're not connecting with groups. They need to hear a story when you were feeling lost and alone. Everybody has a valuable story, and even if you don't think that your story is exciting and full of colour, there's that line, still waters run deep, and somebody who has had a good and peaceful life with Jesus without all the colour and the hysteria has a real solidness and a real groundedness, and their experiences are just as valuable, if not as colourful, as anybody else's. And those people come with a different sort of inner peace. And they're really blessed people not to have been filled with turmoil. It's a real blessing, and obviously that in itself is a testimony to a life with Jesus. Or if you don't even have a story that relates to what these people are experiencing, I think you need to be honest and say, I haven't experienced this. I don't know what you're going through, but I can see that you're in pain. I can see that you're struggling with these things, and I'm here for you, and I'm really happy that you're sharing your story with me. And is there anything I can do to help? Can I pray with you? Do you want to share this story with somebody else? Because as Christians, we know we've shared our stories with our fellow friends, our fellow Christians, and maybe you can take a person to somebody else to share their story with. I think people like to know that their stories are similar, that they're not suffering alone, that people care. I've seen a few people come to faith because of the time I've spent with them. There's one woman that I know through a club, and she was a bit lonely. She had a couple of small children, and she was struggling financially, and it was cold. That's right, she was struggling financially, and it was cold weather, and she had a sewing machine that she had never used, and I sew, and I invited her over to my house with her children to do some sewing, to make some tracksuits for the kids. I guess she was really early in my story where I was really practicing sharing my faith, and so I invited her over, and we spent the day sewing and talking, and me just making suggestions about prayer and how good it is to have God in your life. And she was really touched that I was able to share my time with her and to give her some valuable skills and teach her how to sew, and she had really good results there, and she was really she was really gracious and really enjoyed the time that we spent together. And she rang me about a week later, and in that intervening week, she had taken herself off to her local church and run into a friend that she hadn't seen for like 10 years. And she said, I didn't know that I needed this in my life. And I really want to thank you, Jackie, for showing this to me.
Let's take a moment to draw out from Jackie's conversation some key points to faith sharing. Firstly, love is key. God's loving and our loving is both the purpose and the motivation for sharing faith. Secondly, where there is a will to share, there is a way to share. Actions and words that provoke thinking about and experiencing love opens up the possibilities for faith sharing. Jackie did this through her T-shirts, the things she said, and importantly through ordinary sharing of helping someone. Finally, you have an experience of Jesus that is your story. Don't be afraid to share it with others appropriately and confidently. Look for where the biblical stories of Jesus connect with your story and the story of others. Joining with God in someone's life is a privilege and a responsibility. So as Paul says, pray without ceasing for people and the opportunities that God will bring to you.